The Byzantine, as well as the Romans, of course, famously work with ivory for this very same reasons. It is stark white, it is soft, it is easy to carve, it has very little grain when carving it, which makes it easy to work with. And when we look at these ivories, one of the best pieces that we look at, one of the most famous pieces, is Justinian as world conqueror, also known as the Barberini ivory, because the Barberini family owned it. Now, in 527, he comes to power and he will rule for nearly 40 years until 565. He's not of royal blood. He marries in the Queen Theodora, or Empress Theodora actually has the power, and she has a great deal of issues going on with her historically. She is seen as an actress, or we're told that she may have been an actress in her spare time, which is often code for prostitution. However, let me point out that the histories that we have that deal with Theodora are often written by people who have an axe to grind with Justinian and Theodora. So they are not to be taken as, well, literal, if nothing else. He's particularly pious. He is also very ruthless. So he is going to use his power to encourage is probably a weak word for this, Christianity within the empire. Remember, Christianity is still developing. We haven't gotten to that date of around 600 where 95% of Europe is going to be Christian. During his reign, we see intense theological debates and active persecution of Christian heretics, pagans, and Jews, anyone who doesn't believe in the form of Christianity that Justinian believes in. When we look at the image itself, what we see is a fairly awkward image. The heads are unusually large, and they're trying to mix Christianity with this Hellenistic Greek idea of the body, of culture, as well as the Roman idea, which tended to be much more liberal. The depiction, for example, of a breast would be no big deal in ancient Greece and Rome. We see the bare breast because this is winged victory. But we do see that it is lacking in any form of detail. It's almost like, well, it's a lump of flesh, but we're not really going to do anything that speaks to motherhood, that speaks to anatomy, because they don't want those ideas, those sexual ideas that might come in to be mixed in. They're concerned about piety. When we look at the whole thing overall, what we see is this Mother Earth figure, almost like we saw with the altar of Augustinian peace in the Roman chapter. And you'll see that she has a breast that is exposed. That's because of her role as a mother. Winged victory is typically depicted, again, with one breast exposed, and this is her role as winged victory. So they're borrowing that imagery. That's why we're seeing that exposed breast rather than seeing someone who's fully clothed, which we would more associate with pious Christian imagery. The mother figure, of course, that always speaks to motherhood. That's an old idea that comes from the ancient world. If we look at the rest of it, starting at the top, we see Jesus. You'll notice that he has the same sort of short hair, no facial hair that we've seen from Roman times in late antiquity. So we don't have the Jesus that comes from the conversion in Northern Europe coming into the Byzantine Empire quite yet, or at least not used here. Around him, we see what is called a mandorla, which I will get into more later, but that's basically a body halo. It's sort of an extra large halo that tells us that this is definitely Jesus. We also know from the sign of benediction in his hand and the use of the cross that this would be Jesus. Around him, we have two angels. And then we have a depiction of Justinian himself on a horse, this equestrian portrait, that really speaks to his power, very similar to what we saw from the equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius. Beneath him, we see depictions of both animals and humans offering tribute. In other words, he has incredible power, this imagery that we haven't really seen since the ancient Aegean or ancient Egypt is again resurfacing. But think about where he is. He's effectively in ancient Greece. So you're going to see some of these images, some of these ideas being recycled. At this point, if we see someone with wings, assuming it's not winged victory, it is an angel. So that imagery is going to be developing. And then we have a figure here, again, holding victory. And looks like that's also going to be Justinian, although there's several arguments about who that might be. So the whole thing is basically speaking to the power of Justinian.